refreshment. Imagine working a long day out in the heat. Would refreshment be the first sip of water that you drink? Would it be when you finally get home and you turn on the hot water in the shower? Would it be finally getting something to eat in your stomach? Or would it be finally laying down in your bed after a long day? Perhaps all of those, right? They all sound refreshing. Were you refreshed when you walked through the doors of the Kingdom Hall? No doubt. So we see that there are many different ways that one can be refreshed. And you know, the actual definition for refreshment is the giving of fresh mental and physical strength or energy. So we're going to see how Jesus continuously offers mental and physical strength for the entire human race. So let's look at Matthew chapter 10. We're going to look at verse 29. Matthew 10:29. But before we read it, let's see if we can peer to Jesus' head and see if we can kind of get a glimpse into what he was thinking, so we can kind of get an understanding of what the verse is saying. So imagine Jesus standing next to Jehovah, and they're at the phase of creation, right? And they begin to make man in their image. So Jesus is watching Jehovah, and maybe he watches Jehovah create us. And who knows, maybe originally we were supposed to have 6 fingers. But Jehovah said, I think 5 would be okay. Maybe we were supposed to have 3 legs, 3 arms. But Jehovah said maybe 2 is okay. Maybe Jesus watched Jehovah create us with the ability to speak. Create us with the ability to see in color. Create us with the ability to smell. To be able to taste flavors. Maybe he saw Jehovah develop our brains. Maybe he watched Jehovah develop our skin, our bones. No doubt, Jesus saw how valuable we were in Jehovah's eyes. He saw how much time Jehovah put into creating us. So with that in mind, with Jesus knowing how valuable we are to Jehovah, now let's read Matthew chapter 10, verse 29 and 30. It says, 2 sparrows sell for a coin of small value. Do they not? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground without your Father's knowledge. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. So with Jesus knowing how valuable we are, he says 2 sparrows sell for a coin of small value. Now this coin was called an assarion, and it was given for, I believe it said like 45 minutes worth of work. So it's a really cheap coin. And these 2 sparrows could be bought for one assarion. So that was the point that Jesus was making. That even if the cheapest birds, that according to mankind, that even if the cheapest birds could be bought for one assarion, Jesus, or even when the sparrows fell to the ground, Jehovah would know if they fell, even though they were the cheapest. So it can be said, based on the verse, when it said that not one of them will fall to the ground without your Father's knowledge, you can also substitute that for in regards to us. It says, yet not one of you will be sad or depressed without your Father's knowledge. Yet not one of you will cry or lose a loved one without your Father's knowledge. And then even after the creation phase, Jesus says Jehovah knows how many hairs are on our heads. So even the most simplest thing, despite the many things that Jehovah has to do in heaven, he knows how many hairs are on your head. So that shows us how valuable we are to Jehovah. So Jesus assures us that Jehovah is interested in each one of us personally. Now again, let's see how Jehovah continues to refresh us. Turn over a page to chapter 11, verse 28. Matthew 11:28. It says, come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down, and I will refresh you. Do you think Jesus knew what it felt like to be toiling and loaded down? Well, there are many accounts in the Bible that help us to see that there were several times where there were angels that came down to help Jesus. So he knew what it was like to be toiling and loaded down. But what do those 2 words mean? Because we don't really hear them too often. So toiling means to move slowly, and with difficulty. Loaded down means carrying or bearing a load, or it says, or uses it in a sentence, a heavily loaded freight train. So to get a visual, imagine putting on an 80-pound weight vest, putting on two 20-pound ankle weights, and the field that's outside, imagine running back and forth 10 times with all of that weight on. That would be mentally tough, right? Just thinking about it now, it's tough. Would you be moving slowly? Would you be moving with difficulty? Would you be bearing a large load? Absolutely. So Jesus is saying that anyone that's bearing a large load or anyone that's moving slowly, come to me and I will refresh you. So how will he refresh you in that sense? Well, he'll take that 80-pound vest off. He'll take those 20-pound ankle weights off. He'll put them to the side and you will be refreshed. Again, let's notice what Jesus says next in verse 29 and 30. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and we'll just leave it like that." It says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for yourselves." Verse 30, "For my yoke is kindly and my load is light." So obviously Jesus used the word yoke figuratively in the sense of submission to authority and direction. And majority of you all have done that. Most of us here are baptized. So here's a question: Is it refreshing? Submitting to Christ's authority and direction? Absolutely. Another question: What blessings have you enjoyed since you came under Jesus' yoke? Some good questions to really think about and meditate on. Now in verse 30, Jesus said, "My yoke is kindly and my load is light." So let's go back to the visual. Remember just how mentally tough it was to carry that weight and to run up and down the field. Well, at times, doesn't the weight of this world feel the same way? Especially for ones who don't really know Jehovah. So Jesus is saying, I'll take that weight from the world away from you. I'll put it to the side and instead put on my yoke. I promise it's kind and light. Now, does anyone know how much this book weighs? We don't know the exact weight, but compare that to the weight of the world. Which one is heavier? So we see that this book can be just as light as a feather compared to the weight of the world. And Jesus is saying, come to me. I can offer refreshment for anyone that will come. So may we not run with the weight of the world, but instead run with God's word in our hand. And Jesus will refresh us along the way. May we run and win the race for life.